Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleagues in the government side of the bench. The fact that we can see the clock at 5:30 when it's 5:15 shows we can work together on policy and items from time to time. And perhaps securing the retirement and pension security of Canadians is another time that we should work together on all sides of this House to bring certainty to hundreds of thousands of Canadians in their retirement. And I'm proposing with Bill C-405 a modest proposal, hearkening back to Mr. Swift, where we can actually make progress while also respecting other initiatives. Some of my friends in the NDP and in other parties have ideas with respect to securing and safeguarding the pensions of Canadians' defined benefit pension plans in the circumstances of insolvency. But we should not just wait for a magic bullet. Let's make progress today on an important public policy issue, and that brings us to this bill. All politicians, whether you've been here generations like it seems the Deputy House Leader of the Liberal Party has been, or whether you're new to this Parliament, Madam Speaker, we know the headlines. Nortel Networks, the insolvency and liquidation, thousands of Canadians, the leading stock market company for a time, Madam Speaker, no longer with us. They're still annuitizing that pension plan and the stranded pensioners. Collins and Aikman, Livent, Sears has been in the headlines where pensioners across the country are going to be facing less in retirement. They thought they had worked hard for that secured defined benefit pension, and they're finding in the circumstances of insolvency they're not. We've also seen some circumstances where there has been success in the restructuring of a company in bankruptcy or in insolvency proceedings, and they restructure outside the other end with a variety of degrees of success. We've seen it in multiple instances in Ontario with many companies, Stelco, of course, Algoma, which is emerging from CCAA protection in the coming weeks, that has appeared to preserve 2,700 jobs, Madam Speaker. We saw that with Abitibi, which is now Resolute Forest Products, doing very well. I worked on that firsthand, Madam Speaker, as a brand new articling student and lawyer in the CCAA restructuring of Air Canada. There were thousands of jobs and important service for our country preserved because the insolvency procedure worked. And the pension plan that was at risk is healthy now. People retained their jobs. So the goal for anyone in politics, in advocacy outside here, should always be to maintain these businesses as a going concern. That helps the employees now, that helps the retirees now and in the future, and it's by working together to make sure that it's restructured. You don't see thousands of people laid off and pensioners left stranded. This is an area where Bill C-405, one of the elements, will make us work more collaboratively with the provinces and territories, and highlighting this issue with Canadians and regulators like security commissions, Madam Speaker, because there's a lot they can do. And we've seen that in the Sears case, where dividends, special dividends, squandered goodwill that could have been, and capital that could have been used to make up shortfalls in the pension, Madam Speaker. So this should be an all-hands-on-deck, not an approach where I'm not going to support any bill unless it's my bill. Bill C-405 makes progress for Canadian pensioners, and that's why we should support it. Many Canadians may not be familiar with many of these cases I cited. I worked in some insolvencies as a lawyer, Madam Speaker, so this is also a good time to just publicly educate on what restructuring is meant to do. For a large company, greater of $5 million in revenues, they will generally proceed with the Companies Creditors Arrangement Act, the CCAA that I've already referred to, where they will have a plan of arrangement, and all creditors will have to have a court-monitored plan to restructure that company. Sometimes there's debtor in possession financing, meaning a new company coming in to try and help the restructuring will take precedence on receiving some of their capital back if the restructuring is not successful. But as I said, the goal should always be restructuring. We should have a goal, the Air Canada scenario that I saw, Madam Speaker, as a young lawyer. A successful restructuring, a strong company now, no massive layoffs of employees, secured benefits, and a pension that's healthy now. That should be our goal, the going concern of the company, because then you still have an employer contributing to a pension, and any shortfalls can be made up. With the Bankruptcy and Insolvency Act, that's for smaller companies not eligible for CCAA, where they will make a proposal in bankruptcy, Madam Speaker. So the issue that brought me to bring my first private member's bill, Bill C-405, relates to one of the earliest concerns I had as a brand new member of Parliament in Durham. The General Motors employees, salaried employees in a group called Genmo, Mike Powell and Brian Rutherford, came in to see me to see the distress caused. The near insolvency of General Motors led many pensioners to see that their pension was only funded to an amount in the 70s, in the 70% range, due to changes made in the Ontario government years before, Madam Speaker. They were facing many decades potentially in retirement, likely receiving 20 to 30% less. And right now, pension administrators, when there's an insolvency that's not successful, they have to annuitize the pension. So what they do is they take what's left, they have to then use a large amount of those resources to buy an annuity to provide a steady stream of payments to those stranded pensioners. So if you already have 75% of your value, you're an underfunded pension, and you have to annuitize and lose another 10 or 15%, you're then going to be in a circumstance where you could be receiving 60% of what you thought you'd have from your defined benefit pension in retirement. That should not be acceptable, Madam Speaker. So I'm happy to say that key thrust of Bill C-405 is we should modernize legislation to make sure that pensions, as much as possible, can be kept as a going concern so that they can still be growing. They can have the benefit of the pooling of resources and large numbers of people within the plan. That is the aggregating benefit, Madam Speaker. So that's the first principle of this bill that would be changed, the ability for pension administrators to preserve and enhance that fund. There are other successful pensions that would perhaps like to have assets transferred over, so they'd have a fund within a successful, well-managed fund, and they would have the benefit of pooling of resources, pooling of numbers, and potential upside. So rather than right away knowing in an insolvency situation you're going to annuitize and everyone's going to get less than what they're already going to get under an underfunded plan, this will allow for potential upside. So if the pension plan it transfers into has success, these pensioners will have success. So it will secure and enhance. The other thing, the second thing it will do, is it will bring more fairness to this. We have seen the headlines that drive pensioners crazy, where they see large, massive executive contracts to retain executives in the restructuring. You just have to look at the headlines to see this, Madam Speaker. We've seen it at Sears, Target, and others. These massive contracts for executives are often massively larger than all the employees. It's squandering the funds in what's called key employee retention plans, Madam Speaker. This bill will provide much more ability for pensioners and the court to restrict those excessive key executive retention plan payments, bringing more fairness to the process for the average worker, Madam Speaker, to try and bring back some confidence in the process for these Canadians. The third thing it will establish is a national reporting mechanism, Madam Speaker, working with the Chief Actuary of Canada, the provinces, the territories, and security regulators, making sure that more Canadians know how many pension plans are in an underfunded situation, what risks there are to thousands of Canadians in their retirement, Madam Speaker. This is a particularly acute issue in Southern Ontario, where a number of older defined benefit plans, companies reaching financial distress, it's not just losing the jobs of the employees, Madam Speaker, it's often much larger amounts of retirees within the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area in particular, Madam Speaker. This will educate and get collaboration, this will preserve their funds, and this will bring fairness to executive retention programs. As I said, we want some of the key people to restructure that company because the goal should be to maintain that company as a going concern. The employees are safeguarded. Creditors will agree to working with them to get more in the long run. And pensions will be secured because the pension plan will be continued to be paid into. There can even be a plan to put it back into a balanced state, Madam Speaker. So there is nothing in Bill 405 that conflicts with super priority demands of unions and other groups. There's nothing in Bill C-405 that is a step back. It is steady progress down the field. Let's make progress for tens of thousands of Canadians while advancing other bills that some people might want, but that may be waiting for a Hail Mary pass that I don't think will come. Why is it important to educate Canadians? Because only 40% of Canadians have a pension, Madam Speaker. The good thing is the real risks after the global recession we saw in 2008, 2009 to a lot of the old traditional defined benefit pension plans, things are getting better, Madam Speaker. According to last year's report from the Financial Services Commission of Ontario, there's actually been a decrease in the number of defined benefit plans, mainly in Ontario, that are underfunded. In 1 year alone, from 2016 to 2017, it went from 30% of plans to just 22% are underfunded. Even better, the projected mean solvency of the average plan in Ontario went up from 91 to 96%. And I remind people, time and the strategy of these plans and making sure employees are more of a part of it is critical. As one expert reminded me, the year before Nortel's insolvency, their pension plan was almost fully funded in the high 90s. But market conditions and not the ability to change quickly, and then the lack of success of the restructuring left pensioners holding the bag. That's why we're here with Bill C-405. As one expert told me repeatedly, you don't wind up a plan at the worst possible time. In fact, many families in the Ottawa region where we sit would know that they're still providing an annuity for the Nortel pension plan. They're still annuitizing that plan, Madam Speaker. They're now locking in a lower rate for those people for good, when Bill 405 would actually allow the administrators more options to preserve the resources and grow upside. So if there's the potential for people to have better outcomes in their retirement if they're facing these risks from a defined benefit plan, why would we not all agree on it? We can agree that it's 15 minutes ahead of time. We're just coming up to 5:30 now. Why can't we agree to make steady progress on an issue we're all receiving emails on now? And when the Conservative government enhanced the Wage Earners Protection Plan, protecting more of the earnings of current employees in the context of an insolvency, the Senate committee that was used largely to consult on insolvency and bankruptcy stated directly that the better approach is not actually to go to super priority. This is why the Conservative government didn't proceed. This is why the Liberal government's not going to do it. So people are going to wait for a magic bullet that's never coming. So Bill C-405 will make progress. Here is what the Senate committee report said about super priority in the case of an insolvent defined benefit plan, Madam Speaker. Quote, the committee believes that granting the pension protection sought by some of the witnesses would be sufficiently unfair to other stakeholders. Goes on, super priority status could unnecessarily reduce the monies available for distribution to creditors. In turn, credit availability and the cost of credit could be negatively affected, and all those seeking credit in Canada would be disadvantaged. We're in Small Business Week, Madam Speaker. Higher cost of credit impacts every business, whether they have a pension or not for their employees, whether they're a small and medium-sized business that we're celebrating today. Higher cost of credit, the fewer companies that are able to restructure, that's not actually sound public policy. But as I said, C-405 doesn't preclude us from having the debate on super priority. But as I said, when it was looked at carefully 10 years ago, it was clear if you keep at the benchmark, you want to keep that company a going concern for the employees now, for the economic activity, and for the safety and security of the pension, restructuring has to be the option. Allowing companies to get debtor in possession financing, allow them to restructure under the CCAA is good for job protection. I want to thank the many people that I've consulted in respect to Bill C-405, Madam Speaker, because I've learned as a parliamentarian a lot about this issue, and I'm very proud to have worked with my friend Andrea Bochter at Stikeman Elliott. I met her when we were working on the insolvency of Air Canada, Madam Speaker, and she's one of the leaders in the field. I already mentioned Michael Powell and Brian Rutherford.